Hello, I'm Suzanne James. Welcome to Nightshift, the program where we talk about all things voluntary assisted dying. Last year, the Queensland University completed Australia's first research survey in relation to public awareness amongst Queenslanders of voluntary assisted dying as an end of life legal option. Surprisingly, that study found that only 33% of respondents were aware it was a legal end of life option in Queensland, and only 26% knew how they would access voluntary assisted dying should they become terminally ill. To talk to us some more about that and some other related issues today, we're very kindly joined by Mr. Michael Kaltenbaugh. He is the President of Dying with Dignity Queensland, and he joins us now from Townsville. Michael, welcome.
Well, thank you, Suzanne, and thank you very much for the opportunity to meet.
Now, the research has concluded that significant investment was needed to improve public awareness and also education campaigns in Queensland around voluntary assisted dying. How is Dying with Dignity Queensland hoping to help increase public awareness about VAD as a legal option? And also, what can advocates in the community do to help you with that, Michael?
Well, let's start at the top. First of all, we are a grassroots, not for profit organization. So we depend on the generosity of our members and supporters and others to help us keep carrying the message out there. Secondly, you talk about education and awareness, and to me, that is the key to stabilizing this VAD environment as we go into the next few years. We are actively engaged in the community, giving as many sessions as possible. Advocates can help us by putting their hand up and saying, please come talk to us and help with a presentation, or help us with handing out flyers, or show up at seniors' days and just be there to help carry the message.
And how can they contact you? What's the best way to contact you if they'd like to do that?
Always through the website. There is a contact form on the website at dwdq.org.au, and it says contact us, and that's the best way. We also have a mobile number that I must admit I don't have memorized. That's also on the website as well.
Fantastic. I'd like to talk to you too about telehealth, something that particularly impacts places like Queensland. Now, federal Labor is now in their second term of being well aware of the importance of amending the telehealth laws, but doing absolutely nothing about it while still saying they're so concerned about health and health access in rural and remote areas. Now, just for those that don't know, none of the consults or doctors' discussions or even basic information sessions about voluntary assisted dying can currently be done using telehealth because the government has as yet refused to make the quite small but necessary changes to the relevant telecommunications acts and carriage service laws that to ensure that it specifies voluntary assisted dying is no longer suicide under those laws. Now, former Telecommunications Minister Michelle Rowland is now the Attorney General in the second term Labor government. She and Federal Health and Aged Care Minister Mark Butler are both very well aware of this issue. Now, as I said, Michael, because of your geography, Queenslanders are very much impacted by this. There's a lot of rural and remote people in your service area. So where is Dying with Dignity Queensland at with this issue, and what can people do to lobby government, especially when they seem so determined to ignore the needs of remote and rural health consumers?
Well, there's a few things that we're doing. Number one, we are very blessed that we have a federal politician here, Philip Thompson, who's very much a supporter of the type of efforts that we're talking to, and he's been welcoming to us to have those conversations. The second is every one of our communications with supporters and members, we make it a point to ask them to contact their local federal politician about this issue. The third is anytime we're in the community, we're raising it in a session. And with the community radio, we'll have that conversation as well.
You're all for expanding care and support access for loved ones of VAD patients. It is great to see the growing awareness across the board for the role of people like carers, unpaid carers and family carers, and also family members when someone is dying, especially when the person is dying at home, which comes with its own special issues. The increased support we're seeing lately includes things like End of Life Doulas, who do provide terrific support services, but as yet haven't been included by the government as home care service providers, which is a blocker for many people. They're unable to use their home care funding for those services. Griefline also now has a VAD specific service. What other access and support improvements would your organisation like to see in support of loved ones going through the VAD process?
I think this is one of the best questions we've talked about for this session, because it starts to highlight what's happened with this program. We have, we thought that VAD was not going to become as well accepted as it has been. And I think we have now learned that the care of the family and the loved ones is very, very important as well. And we haven't done as much as we could there. We are actively engaged with anybody who will listen, palliative care, QVAD support, anybody to say, please help us understand how we can make this better, how we can institutionalize this better. And I think that's an ongoing issue and challenge, and one that we're up for.
Now, you also talked about expanding and stabilising support for practitioners who
Yes.
are either in the process of or have been trained for providing voluntary assisted dying services. Now, all states I've spoken to who have reported, of course, there's a shortage of general practitioners trained to provide this service. They say it's highly rewarding personally, but not necessarily so under the Medicare rebates. So, again, what expansion and stabilisation and support do you believe is needed in Queensland to recruit, train, and retain doctors?
Well, I think it starts with a funding foundation that the practitioners can rely upon. We have some very strong anecdotal stories where people have been moved from department to department to department to department and are not getting adequate support, are being second guessed on what they're doing, and are being stretched pillar to post to try to provide the service. I think as we go through this review cycle coming up, that's one of the major things we want to talk about to stabilize and enhance that support network, both for practitioners but also for people.
Speaking of support for practitioners, one of the things they often assist people with is end of life planning, things like advanced care directives and do not resuscitate orders, etc. Now, many of this documentation applies to people whether or not they're going through the voluntary assisted dying process. It's like making a will. A lot of them things you can do ahead of time, regardless of your medical profile. So, how are these processes going in Queensland, and where can people go for the correct information about things like advanced care directives?
Well, my advice would be to get a hold of a solicitor. They are the best, but they are the best and most contemporary in the community to be able to provide that advice and counsel relative to the individual. The second is palliative care can help. The third is there's a free legal aid society that people can access.
Now, many of the other dying with dignity organisations have also been very helpful with things like directing people towards health service sites and templates for advanced care directives and things. Does Dying with Dignity Queensland have that support yet?
We do as well. It's not as mature as we would like for it to be. We are in the process of getting that. Well, we're refreshing our website. We're refreshing all those contacts, and we're putting those tools at readily disposable places so that people can access them.
At Queensland University of Technology are also currently doing a study on voluntary assisted dying and dementia in Australia. Is Dying with Dignity Queensland supporting that campaign? A lot of people are hoping to have dementia included in voluntary assisted dying and things like advanced care orders.
We support it and we encourage it. We also acknowledge that it's a journey. It is going to take some amount of time for the results, the medicos, culture, and the legislation to kind of catch up with that. But we recognize it, we're geared up for it, and we think it's the right and proper thing to do.
In the meantime, maybe people need to ensure a member of their family or someone they're close to is appointed a medical decision maker so that at least their wishes are able to be made clear at the end of life if they have gone into dementia, because it's very difficult for someone in dementia diagnosis to have their wishes heeded because they have not considered to have capacity to make that decision. So it's very important that long before that occur, people speak to their family and speak to their friends and make sure their wishes are known and that they have that paperwork in place if they possibly can.
Well, also, Suzanne, I would offer to add there that it's important that whoever's going to be your vocal advocate is a genuinely true vocal advocate. that, if an individual's desire are for these things, that regardless of what the advocate may think personally, they're going to follow what the directive is asking them to do.
Yeah, it can be difficult at end of life to have the patient's wishes adhered to at the best of times. And if there's dementia
Amen.
involved or other complications, it can be very hard. And you have to be prepared to speak up and stand up for what it is you're advocating for, because the system is quite happy to push you around and just revert to type and do whatever's best for the hospital or aged care home or wherever else you may
That's
be.
exactly right.
Yeah. So just to finish off, Michael, I might go off script for a moment. How did you get involved in voluntary assisted dying advocacy work, and how did you end up as president of Dying with Dignity Queensland?
I got involved with voluntary assisted dying when I was still living in the States. And it happened a number of years ago. Um, During the tragedy of the AIDS epidemic, I lost 5 friends who were hemophiliacs to AIDS because of tainted blood. Now, that was tragic enough. However, there was no mechanisms in place to help these people who had this tragedy visited upon them to be able to make some end of life choices. And that has stuck with me for a long time. And it has been I was very active in that community in Houston, and I've been very active here. Here, what got me attracted was I went to a session where the Glenn Jones group was and DWDQ was. And I started chatting to people, and one thing led to another. And I said, I think I need to put my hand up here. And I have, and now here I am.
Here you are. You've been president for how long, Michael?
9 months.
Right. Now, how many others on your board of directors?
We're in a little bit of flux right now because we're in the lead up to AGM. So we've had a couple of people fall off, which you'd expect. I think I think we'll end up with 7 or 8 if I had to guess. We had the honor of having Joss Hall, who had been president for I think 10, 12 years. And so being able to follow in her footsteps and be able to take it to the next step is really the charge that I have and the other members of the management committee.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Michael. It's been very interesting to speak to you, and I hope we can catch up with Queensland again sometime soon.
Yeah, don't forget about us because we are on the move. We think that this is something that requires continued energy and focus, and we welcome any support and advocacy from the community to help us achieve our goals.
You do wonderful work, and thank you so much.
My pleasure. Enjoy your day.
I'm Suzanne James. Thank you for listening to Nightshift.